Hello, and welcome to episode 203, all about a chapter coming to a close, being the 203rd part of That's What I'm Talking About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. For the past almost 4 years, I've been experiencing the world of J.R.R. Tolkien for the first time. And right now, I am done.
Fair assessment.
Today, I am joined by the wonderful idiots who helped to start it all. Tyler Carlin and Ethan Edgehill.
Yes, this is
a round of
welcome.
applause.
Welcome
What
from
is
me,
up? Woo!
Tyler Carlin. Hi, everybody. I'm Ethan Edgehill. We started this podcast from a tweet. You started this podcast. We helped you out with it from a tweet 4 years ago.
Actually, you know what? I bet I sent that tweet a year ago, today, basically.
Maybe.
It had to have been around this time, early June, because I launched in July, right?
No, because we talked for a while.
It felt like a while, but we were young then.
No, because I remember when I talked to Tyler, I think I talked to Tyler about you in May of that year. I was like, yo, we should make this podcast on a network. And I remember where and when I was when that happened. So I think it was
you were
May.
at a podcast conference and you were drunk.
I was not at a podcast conference. I was at a podcast live show.
Oh, okay.
I'm not cool enough to go to a podcast conference without Tyler. I just was at a live show for Mabim Bam.
I think was in if I recall correctly, I was in my last house, in what became my daughter's room.
And
but
3 children ago.
Office. Yeah, 3 children ago. I had none kids when we started this. Now I have 3.
Okay, it was May 5th, 2019. I tweeted, podcast idea. I read The Lord of the Rings, having only seen the first movie and hating it, and have hardcore Lord of the Rings fans on as guests, a la Potterless. It's called That's What I'm Talking About.
I've appeared on this show too many times if you were looking for hardcore Lord of the Rings fans. Because I'm not a hardcore Lord of the Rings fan.
I've had several people on who are not hardcore Lord of the Rings fans.
Since you started this podcast, I have not read Lord of the Rings. Not more than a chapter that you asked me to read.
That's fine. I've only read it the once.
I read The Hobbit in one afternoon.
I read The Hobbit in one afternoon.
The Hobbit's delightful, though. I feel like that's an easy, sit down, pull a Beth Reekles and go to a picnic for yourself in the park and have a blanket and read and have a charcuterie board.
You shouldn't finish it all in one afternoon. It's a lot denser than it seems like it's going to be.
The Hobbit?
Yeah.
I feel like The Hobbit is dense, yeah.
It's 212 pages, and it took me way longer than 212 pages to read.
Oh, okay, then I don't know.
Yeah, I got pretty used to what 200 pages of a book felt like in the year where I read 200 books. And The Hobbit was one of them, and that was a dense 200 pages. He says a lot of things with every word, as I'm sure you know.
I'm aware.
That's been my journey with Lord of the Rings since you started your journey.
Yeah, I've had quite a journey. It has been a journey.
Would you say it's an unexpected journey?
It's been unexpected. I've gone there and back again.
Yeah, and there and back. And also there, and then also back.
Hold on. So we're here at the end of it. I'm going to put on my interviewer cap real quick. We're here at the end of it.
I'm going to put on my interviewer cap and drop the microphone.
For WBEZ Chicago and WNPR, I'm Ira Glass. Let me just...
Okay, anyway, the question here
The question on everybody's minds as we are at the zenith. we are
Stop. You have to redo that question because no one is going to be able to hear it. Okay. What is going on?
This microphone stand came with the microphone and it sucks. Looks like you guys are using what's referred to as a boom arm, but I no longer record a podcast every single week because life has gotten in the way, and I just don't have a boom arm set up on this desk, okay? So I have a mic stand.
All right, your question is...
Do you like The Lord of the Rings?
That's a good question.
You've been there and back again.
I really have. The problem is that it's so hard to separate the story from my experience of experiencing the story. And so
So
I don't know if I had just like sat down by myself and read Lord of the Rings or watched Lord of the Rings, not for content creation. I don't know if I would have. The thing is that I never ever would have finished reading the books. I would have maybe finished the first chapter and that's it.
Yeah, I think the books are, in this day and age, for somebody who's not like trying to get into it, like I think you have to approach it with some of the mentality that you had going into it, because I don't think that any reasonable person would pick up the books and be like, oh, this is delectable to read. I'm enjoying every nonsensical chapter of this.
You'd be surprised.
I would absolutely be surprised. You've talked to a lot more people than
I've talked to a lot of people who have done just that.
But
okay,
then they went on and made content with you about it. So,
yes.
Somebody must have introduced it to them, or you know what I mean? So I guess, okay, follow-up question. You have a hard time separating your experience of it with the content itself. Have you enjoyed your experience of it?
Yeah, I would say largely. I hope.
To all the guests and listeners
if I haven't enjoyed the experience, I have wasted 4 years of my life talking about something.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Okay, I will say yes, I like Lord of the Rings. This is what's so dumb. I have a Lord of the Rings tattoo now. And I'm like, well, it's a complicated question because
I'm terrified of Ferris wheels. Okay?
Yeah, I don't like
terrified
bees.
of them.
I like the idea of bees.
Why did you get a Ferris wheel if you're specifically terrified of Ferris wheels?
So you have 2 tattoos. You have 1 tattoo. I have 19. At some point, the answer is I thought it looked cool.
Okay, yeah.
It was like a line from a song that I couldn't get out of my head, and so I messaged the guy, and it was one of my many ideas, and I was just like, I'll see what he comes up with. And he came up with it, and I was like, that's exactly what I wanted without even knowing it. And like, it doesn't really have a better meaning. I tell people it does sometimes because I like messing with people, but it's because it looked cool.
Cool. Do I like Lord of the Rings? Yes. I guess I'm a fan now.
Do you like it in the way that not April Ludgate, do you like it in the way that Ann Perkins likes Harry Potter?
You made me watch all 8 Harry Potter movies. I don't even like Harry Potter. That's insane. You love Harry Potter. You've seen all 8 movies.
That's on it. That is what it feels like. Did you see that I made that TikTok with that sound?
No, I actually didn't.
I made that TikTok a couple months ago, probably now at this point. That's what it feels like.
Here's an experience I've had. There's 2 TikTok-related experiences that I've had frequently while you did this podcast. And they both have to do with your TikToks. But I would see, like, trends, and I'd be like, oh, I need to tell Mary Clay that she should do this with Lord of the Rings. And then, like, 3 videos later, it's damn you doing it with Lord of the Rings.
Exact thing,
like,
yeah.
Like, I kid you not, 30, 40 times that happened to me. And the other is that you would like jump scare me in duets.
I jump scare myself because now you'll scroll your For You page and your own video will show up as like a potential like promotion, basically being like, you could promote this video. So I'll just be scrolling and then all of a sudden it's my face. It's quite an experience.
It wouldn't be that. It would be because I don't ever check if something's stitched ahead of time, and I would just like see Don Marshall's face for like 4 seconds, and then your face, and I'm just like,
I'm there. I'm here.
I know you.
I'm everywhere. I am the Eye of Sauron.
You're not supposed to exist inside the internet.
I have a question. The Eye of Sauron, is that in the books?
No. Peter Jackson misread something.
That's what I thought, because I remember reading the book and being like, "This not mentioned." This big tower.
This is a very contentious question that you're actually asking right now, Tyler, because Sauron's human disguise in Rings of Power was very controversial. Supposedly, he's going to have another human form in future seasons that has just been cast. And people have opinions about it, if you can imagine that. But these minute details about whether or not Sauron looks elf-like are what people choose to spend time thinking about and arguing with.
Here's my thing on
people.
That's What I'm Talking About and the Tolkien community as a whole. I think you as an individual have had one of the largest positive impacts on the toxic fandom that is Tolkien, like out of anybody.
I would like to think so.
Because I think you can do things Don Marshall can't do.
Yes, because I've gotten a lot of comments and I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying it's really refreshing to hear a woman in this space talking about this, because I can go and listen to a billion other guys talking endlessly about this, but that's not the voice and the perspective that I want to hear.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
yeah.
And I think that's very, very cool. And I mean, I'm not in the space, obviously, nearly as much as you are, but I do feel like this has to be one of the larger podcasts in the Tolkien community.
I honestly have no idea, because my frame of reference can only come from like the numbers that I see behind the scenes. And I don't know like what that compares to with the other Tolkien podcasts. I don't know if like, if you were to ask the average Lord of the Rings fan, like name 3 Lord of the Rings podcasts, I have no idea if mine would come up. I know for a fact that the Prancing Pony podcast is probably like the top one, that you go to Spotify or whatever, or Apple Podcasts, and you type in Lord of the Rings or Tolkien, and theirs is probably the very first one that pops up. So I have no idea, but I think it's interesting to think about that you were saying the impact of this podcast on like toxic fandom, because that's like not at all what I started out as.
Well, and I don't know.
And I'm kind of like glad it evolved into being this like, hey, a lot of other people in this space suck. Come over here and we'll just enjoy things together.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from one thing that I'm very impressed that you're able to do extremely well. Something that like drove me away from wanting to make podcasts as much is your ability to, I guess, really embrace TikTok and its
I was
ability.
like, this is going to go to some really serious, deep.
No, and it's not going that
thing.
direction. But your ability to like really embrace TikTok and use it as a tool to grow your audience, which is like what it's for and what Ethan and I could have easily been doing, but I just can't do it. Like I cannot sit there and make the videos, and I don't even have TikTok on my phone anymore.
Okay, brag. I think it's interesting that your like outside impression is that I gained a lot of listeners from TikTok and stuff, because there's a lot of people on my TikTok who follow me who have zero idea that I run a podcast.
Yeah, no, I don't think that well, I'm sure TikTok definitely helped you gain listeners, but I think...
yeah, I definitely think so.
I guess what
too, but...
TikTok, to me, what TikTok did for you and for the community is like, it may not have grown your podcast, but it did grow your presence in the Tolkien community. That's
a good point. Yeah, I will say that was when I really started to connect with a bunch of other creators, because it's so much more personal than seeing like tweets or something, because like you're actually seeing the person's face. They're sharing their opinions, or you can see like what trends are they doing and go like, oh, we have similar tastes in humor, or and you can also pretty quickly judge, is this person chill or nah? And if they're nah, then I do not interact with them. And there are a lot of people on the app who are also Tolkien creators that I am like, I prefer to not invite you into my space and invite myself into your space,
Yeah. So
you're never going to agree with everybody that has an opinion about a specific subject, especially.
Well, it's not so much about like agreeing opinions. It's more about, unfortunately, the bar now in the Tolkien fandom is like, are you cool with there being a black elf? And if they don't seem chill about that, then that's a huge issue. And like, that's the, ground level floor.
Yeah, I didn't mean like agree opinions. I mean, you're not going to agree with everybody.
Yeah.
Just like, but the people that make content about Tolkien are people that have opinions about Tolkien. They also have opinions about other things, clearly.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, you've been able to connect with a lot of guests on the show, and you've interacted with a lot of different Tolkien creators. A couple questions here. were you able to be a guest on a lot of other Tolkien podcasts?
Definitely not in the beginning. And I felt really bad having guests on, and they would be like, we'd love to have you on our show. And I'm like, that's so nice, but I can't, because I am like, I have a very strict like embargo of like how I interact with this content right now, because I'm trying to remain as, you know, a clean slate as possible. And I can't risk any spoiler. And the problem is that like with something as old as Lord of the Rings, is a lot of people are like, you don't even realize what is and isn't a spoiler to someone who has never interacted with it. So very easily things can like slip out that you don't even realize. So I felt bad having to be like, that's super nice, but no, thank you.
Well, and
but
go ahead.
That's when it started getting more fun, when I was able to start like reciprocating and going on people's podcasts, and finally being able to venture into the fandom that I was creating content for, like actually being able to participate in it now.
And then do you feel like going into your next topic, has that been revealed yet?
Yes.
Okay.
There was an announcement several weeks ago. In case you missed it and you're wondering what this is about, I will be quote unquote ending That's What I'm Talking About. More on that in a second. And then this fall, I will be starting a Star Wars podcast called Skywalk Before You Run. I recognize that the name isn't as good as That's What I'm Talking About, but look, I tried for a long time.
I heard somebody suggested That's What I'm Talking About on TikTok, and I cannot wait for you to understand that and realize that was
I
the
got
answer.
a lot of those comments, and I'm like, I don't know how to emphasize to you that I don't understand this.
You will get that one on day one. I can tell you
and you'd
right
be
now.
like, damn it.
As long as you're doing day one the way that I hope you are, you will get that one right away.
Okay, cool.
I will say on the back end of that,
I don't think she's doing day one the way you're hoping she is.
I'd be very surprised if not. Going into the Star Wars community, I do think you'd have an easier time with this, because even though you have no spoiler or anything like that, Star Wars is almost so big that if you were to tell, like, if I had a show about Star Wars and you told me that you'd only seen 2 of the movies, so you didn't want to come on my show because you didn't want to risk spoilers, I think it would be very easy for me to just rearrange my show schedule to be like, okay, in this episode we're talking about one of the 2 movies that
We're
this
just
person
gonna,
has
yeah.
seen.
I think it's kind of similar with Lord of the Rings, because there is such a depth of content there that you encounter fans who have never ever in their life like even read who are like huge Lord of the Rings fans but have never read the books even, you know.
Yeah, there's very little pressure as a casual Lord of the Rings fan to feel like I need to read the books.
Yeah, that's what I would hope. And that's like the message. That was a hard message for me to try to convey when the premise was me reading the books.
Right.
And like, that's one of the things that I say is you don't have to read I say like, here are my hot takes of Lord of the Rings. 1, you don't have to read the books. 2, Tom Bombadil is awesome. And then people are like, okay, but in order to know Tom Bombadil, you have to read the books. And I'm like, those aren't mutually exclusive opinions.
Right.
Like,
Real quick, did you say earlier that the Eye of Sauron is not in the books?
yeah. I mean, like, it's more like a metaphorical eye of, like in Handmaid's Tale, like the eye under his eye, like that kind of a thing. Like the Eye of Sauron is always watching us.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay,
So
yeah,
it's
you don't have to
not
read the
like-
books then.
PJ took that literally.
I think PJ got it right, actually, if I'm being honest with you. Like, we've all experienced something in a movie or TV show adaptation that you're like, no, that was better than it was written on the page.
Well,
The Eye of Sauron is iconic.
there was another
A
thing.
literal lighthouse.
There was another thing in the
But like an
movies that-
evil lighthouse, right? Like, nobody had ever thought of that before.
Does the ring make you invisible in the books? I feel like it doesn't.
It does.
It does. Okay.
There's a lot of discussion about like what powers specifically the One Ring has, and that it's thought that maybe the One Ring enhances abilities that are naturally within the person possessing the ring, and one of the traits of hobbits is that they're actually very like sneaky.
Yeah, they can
like,
go more or less undetected.
They're very like lucky people. And so it's theorized that the reason Bilbo and Frodo turn invisible is because the One Ring turns them as hobbits invisible, but then that can explain why in the prologue Sauron is wearing the One Ring, but you still see him. Well, and it's like, is the man inside that suit invisible? Or like what happened there, you know?
And that was not something I had ever talked to anybody about or had like told to me like in so many words, but I definitely, when I read The Hobbit, I was like, oh, the ring just might like enhance your like job. Because Bilbo was hired in The Hobbit to be the burglar.
He's a burglar, yeah.
And in the constant reminder you have to give yourself when you're watching The Hobbit of like, this was not a prequel. This came first. Like, this is the origin of the One Ring. So like, it definitely does at this point feel like one of those things where somebody was like, or he got to writing Lord of the Rings. It was like, I did say this thing made you invisible though. So like, kind of work my way around that one.
Yeah, that's what always gets me about like how this entire universe, I mean, like if you want to go into like the chronological order of when Tolkien started writing what ideas down, like he didn't start by writing The Hobbit. He started by inventing an Elvish language. And then he started by writing these tales of lore that are in the Silmarillion. And then he randomly one day thought of a hole in the ground with The Hobbit, and then that's how The Hobbit started. But like, it's really wild to read The Hobbit, and then just what gets me is that his publishers were like, this was great. Do you have any more ideas? And he was like, let me think about it. And then came back a decade later with Lord of the Rings. And like, Lord of the Rings is the sequel. Like that, like Lord of the Rings, like he didn't
to the
start
children's
with
book.
Lord of the Rings. It started with Bilbo going on this little adventure with dwarves and a wizard and like encountering weird goblins and trolls and like very like kind of by the book, almost like fairy tale quest like events, you know?
What I have a question, just in the history of fantasy, because most of the fantasy I feel like I've read was written after Tolkien. I think.
Most people, probably.
Yeah. How by the book would that have been in the 40s or whenever it came out?
What, The Hobbit?
Yeah, like were like trolls and goblins and orcs like familiar ideas? I know hobbits weren't, because that was like Tolkien's creation.
Yeah. I don't know specifically about like the actual content of The Hobbit compared to like, was he like the first person ever writing about trolls or, you know, whatever? Like, I don't think so. I'm sure, like, I think these ideas all existed beforehand, but
anything that comes up in Shrek was pre-Tolkien. So like any of the fairy tale creatures from Shrek are fairy tale creatures. Like you said, it's in the name. Like, well, that's and like way before Tolkien.
I guess that's the idea. Like fairy tales have always existed, and that's what Tolkien believed he was writing. And later on, because like at the time, the idea of like a fantasy genre, the only concept of fantasy at the time was like fairy books for little kids. And so what he did with The Hobbit evolving into Lord of the Rings was creating the fantasy genre because it was like a heightened fairy tale. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
somebody described it one time to me as J.R.R. Tolkien thought of himself as like a new god trying to write new myth for this like world that didn't exist, but also like for our world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but like they don't make myths anymore. Like you don't come up with new myths.
Yes, except for Tolkien decided, I will. This is what I will do.
But instead, it's like he like created new types of fiction. He's the preeminent fiction author, which probably pissed him off.
A lot of things about how his books were perceived later on pissed him off. And it has nothing to do with like authorial intent and like people misinterpreting or, you know, twisting whatever it's that like he didn't like the idea of people like obsessing over him. and obsessing over his work. Like, that was a very weird thing for him to confront. And so, like, the mere fact that we are gathered here together, dearly beloved,
To talk about J.R.R. Tolkien.
Dearly beloved
talking
Tolkien.
about J.R.R. Tolkien, he would probably, if he were here, he would probably say to us, like, why are you doing this?
Like,
Go
it's
get
not
a
that
life.
deep. Yeah.
Like, I think, like, he has
Big
an
John Green
understanding. He has an understanding for people discussing their shared interests and, like, sharing ideas, and imparting, like, wisdom and asking questions and thinking critically, like, with each other and groups of people. But I don't think he did that or wanted people to do that to the depths that, like, I have done for the past 4 years.
Well, we did.
The end.
So, sorry, James.
Yeah, that's it's actually John, but that's okay.
Whatever.
It's actually Jolkin.
Jolkien.
Jolkin, Rolkin, Rolkin,
Jolkin, Rolkin, Tolkien.
My first memory of The Lord of the Rings was not the movies. My father was reading probably The Hobbit.
It's always a dad. It's always a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, I was introduced by my mother.
Okay.
Fun
I was
fact.
introduced into this world by my mother.
Something that, like, if I had the time and the energy, I would love to go back and, because I ask all of my guests, how did you get introduced to Lord of the Rings? I want to make a pie chart of, like, where did people, like, who introduced them? I bet you the biggest chunk of that pie would be either dad or grandfather.
My father definitely didn't talk to me about Lord of the Rings. In fact, I believe his exact words were, "You're not old enough to understand this." So
I'm not old enough to understand it.
yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, none of us fought in the war. Like,
Yeah. He was reading, I think it was Fellowship of the Ring, and the book had Tolkien's name on it at the top and then the name of the book at the bottom. But Tolkien's name was so big that I thought the name of the book was The Tolkien. And so I was standing at the bus stop with Alex, who was a valedictorian, but at this time he was in 4th grade. And we were talking about books, and I was like, "Oh man, have you read The Tolkien?" My dad was reading it because Alex was really smart and I was really young. And he was like, "No, I've never heard of it." And like 7 years later, I was really embarrassed about that one moment.
it sounds like you're still embarrassed by that one moment.
Yeah, it sounds like he wouldn't have known that it was called Lord of the Rings or been able to correct you. So he probably went home and looked it up and was like, oh, maybe he didn't mean the title of the book. Maybe he just meant the author's name.
He was probably talking about the author. Yeah. Have you ever read Tolkien?
Yeah. Well, to answer a few questions that I've gotten, I won't go through all of them I asked for questions and was like, does anyone, like, this is low key the last, like, I don't know, official episode closing things out, and whatnot. And people ask some, like, specific questions that I think would be boring for y'all to just sit here and have me be like, that's a great question. What is my favorite moment ever of Lord of the Rings?
Ooh.
I don't know.
No, that's interesting. I want to know.
Yeah, I want to know too.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Wait, do you
No,
have an
that's not
answer, Ethan?
interesting.
I think I have an answer.
What's your one of the questions I was asked was what are your favorite moments that you experience from the books or movies, etc. And for me, it would be hard to pick just one. Do y'all have favorite moments from Lord of the Rings?
I think they would all be Hobbit focused. Not Hobbit the story, but like the 4 Hobbits. I think, and Bilbo's birthday, just as like a whole concept, is easily one of my favorites.
Iconic. Yes.
I really like the whole thing between Pippin and Gandalf, or Merry and Gandalf, whichever one of them.
It's Pippin. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I thought so.
Fool of a Took.
Yes.
Which I have embroidered by one Valerie Winters on a embroidery hoop. Fool of a Took. Throw yourself in next time, and then you will be no further nuisance.
Yes, that moment, big for me. Sam carrying Frodo up the mountain is big for me.
Oh, I mean, how can that moment not be like at least crack the top 5 for like everyone?
But I think one of the most interesting moments in the history of the whole thing is there's a moment in Two Towers where in the movie where Aragorn kicks a helmet and he screams afterwards because he's in like such agony. But actually what really happened is Viggo Mortensen broke his toe.
He actually broke two of them.
Yeah, 2 of his toes when he kicked the helmet and the screen was so good that they just kept the shot and put it into the movie. And to me, it's just so...
Yeah, and when you are watching him, like you're literally watching Viggo Mortensen break his toes in front of your very eyes.
In front of your very eyes. That's incredible.
I should have seen that coming. I should have seen that coming from a mile away.
I don't know how you didn't, honestly. Like,
Ethan, what about you? Do you have a favorite moment?
Man, I like the first thing I think about whenever I think about Lord of the Rings, because I'm a movie guy almost entirely. Like, I've read The Hobbit and I've read the books. It's just been a very long time, and I can't bring myself to revisit it for whatever reason. So I'm a movie guy first and foremost. And the thing that I think of immediately when I think of Lord of the Rings is Billy Boyd singing his little song while Denethor eats tomatoes badly near him. And like, I know that, Mary Clay, you have clowned that moment.
Well, not me.
Not
it's
even
TikTok.
less than it deserves, honestly, because like the acting from what's his name, the guy from Fringe who played Denethor, eating that tomato is just like, it's such a meme.
Well, it
but
became a joke. Yeah, it became a joke. Like, it started with, there was a video of like a goat eating, like a TikTok of a goat eating a tomato, and then someone duetted it with "Home is behind the world," and then another person added on and was like an orc, and another person was Faramir, and then I added on, and I was like Gandalf sitting there, like he's like sitting in the courtyard, like clinging onto his staff, like so depressed about what has just happened.
But they're fighting that battle in the background while that song plays, and there's like no other sound. And that's like one of those moments where I remember being in the theater and watching that and be like, I want to make movies when I grow up. Like, that is like one of the formative moments. Like when the banner drops on the T-Rex at the end of Jurassic Park. Like, it's like that.
And that's a great moment that we were talking about earlier of like, there are so many things that, you know, say what you will about book to movie adaptations, there's always going to be changes. There's always going to be things lost or things that you don't like. But a lot of times there are things that the movie can do better. And that scene in particular is something that like it wouldn't have worked in a book format.
No.
And the way that they executed it on screen is just so brilliant.
Well, like Hold on, it's a lot of those moments actually, because like if you look at the Battle of Helm's Deep, a chapter that you and I covered together, that is nothing.
Famously,
it's nothing in the book.
8 pages.
It's 8 pages, and it is like still to this day when I think about movie fights, when I think about big epic battles in movies or in cinema or in television, whatever. That's my like. If it doesn't knock me out the way that Helm's Deep did, it's not even worth watching. Still to this day.
Like, they've been trying to match Helm's Deep. I think there's 4 John Wick movies now, and I don't think in a single one of them does he go down a flight of stairs on an orc's shield shooting arrows at orcs.
No,
Not
that's
a single
true, but
person
he does go down
double
some stairs.
doors and sways in slow motion as the blood and sweat drips from their body.
I think that's all The Witcher is, actually. I'm pretty sure that's like 3 seasons.
Why do you think I watch it?
Of Hank Cavill
Actually, literally,
opening doors.
The thing that got me to start to watch The Witcher is there was a clip from the first episode that was like being shared on social media, being like the choreography and the cinematography of this is outstanding. Like, this is an insane fight sequence, and it's Geralt fighting off like, I don't know, 8 people, but like you see him, you know, doing his Witcher thing, and then like it goes into slow motion, and I was like, I'm watching this now. I'm watching this because of this scene.
And now we're 20 years on from Return of the King being released in theaters, or just about 20 years. And it's, at this point, whenever I watch a Marvel movie and they go into like the big fight, I just like glaze over and like lean back in my seat.
It's not Helm's Deep.
All right, I'll be here for an hour. Cool. It's not Helm's Deep, though.
Cap might have wielded Thor's hammer, but there's no shield surfing.
He did not toss
in Endgame.
John Rhys Davies.
There was no dwarf tossing in that movie.
I think both of those things might have happened. Maybe not
dwarf
tossing.
I think shield surfing.
I think shield surfing. I think can certainly happen in the MCU. The shield is a pretty
but did it?
But I think it has. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I feel like in the Captain America show, somebody surfs on a shield behind a truck.
Okay, I can see. Yeah, I can see that. But did they? That you know what? What I wish they had done in Endgame is there's a scene of Cap and he takes his shield off his back and throws it down a flight of stairs and then takes out a bow and arrow and shoots all the aliens. And it's literally just an exact copy of Legolas in Helm. Like, not even trying to be original, just an exact
just like blatantly,
recreation.
like they even put Orlando Bloom in the Cap suit for a second.
Well, and the interesting thing about that, and if that was to ever happen in Marvel or happen the way it does, like, Lord of the Rings is canonically fiction in the MCU.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
at one point, Bucky Barnes is literally like, I read The Hobbit when it came out in 1934.
I want to, granted I don't watch any of those shows, so maybe like there are other like nods to that, but I want to see like a scene of someone telling Bucky, being like, hey, did you know there's a sequel? Because The Lord of the Rings was published in the 1950s, which is after
he got frozen. Yeah,
he got frozen.
It might
so
honestly,
he emerges from his sleep, and not only are there 3 new Lord of the Rings books, but there's also the entire Lord of the Rings movie trilogy.
It might actually be on because he has like a notebook of like stuff to look up when unfrozen.
Cap does, not Bucky.
Cap, you're right. No, it's not Bucky. That's Cap. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Don't test me, okay?
I'm not testing you. If anything, I'm testing me and failing.
That's like, oh shoot, I don't think.
Well,
did y'all watch The Last of Us? I can't remember.
No,
I haven't seen the last episode, but yes.
Okay. Well, a joke was that so the outbreak in The Last of Us hit in it was like September. It was like early September 2003.
Yeah.
And it was like just before Return of the King would have come out. And it was like, man, can you imagine going into the apocalypse and never watching Rohan show up at Pelennor Field? Watching Aragorn storm, the Black Gate. Like, can you imagine?
He didn't see Return of the King. They didn't see Mean Girls or Dodgeball or
oh my God.
Anything. They barely got SpongeBob.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
they
but they saw
didn't
the
see
Bulls.
Princess Diaries 2 Royal Engagement.
Yeah, they saw the
Michael
Bulls,
Jordan.
but they didn't see Tom Brady.
They got to see Michael Jordan come back to basketball and announce his return and leave of baseball with fucking Bugs Bunny.
They didn't see LeBron James, ever.
Well, he would have played in high school.
There's a lot.
In Ohio.
Are we, what's that sentence? It's like, are we real or are we in Ohio?
All is strange and vague.
Are we dead?
Or is this Ohio?
Do you know who LeBron James is, Mary Clay?
He's a sports person.
Oh, come on. You know what sport he plays.
I think it's basketball.
You are correct. It's basketball.
Okay, good. Well, I'm more familiar with the vine of the kid going, LeBron James.
Are you familiar with his
Wait for
pizza
that's
chain?
what I'm bawling about when she watches the
basketball.
NBA.
Do you know, I would literally be copying Mike Schubert at that point because he has a basketball podcast.
No. Sorry. Not the way Mike Schubert watches the NBA. Like you
Schubert
started
being like,
season
so.
1, episode 1.
NBA stands for National Basketball Association.
Correct.
Yes.
Great. Oh, we were talking about favorite moments. That's it. So my favorite moments, the reveal of Aragorn, both in the book and in the movie, is so iconic. Maybe I'll pick like one from each movie or something. I don't know. I mean, not to do all the Aragorn stuff. Aragorn pushing the doors open. Iconic.
Aragorn standing there at 42 minutes and 4 seconds of the third movie.
If you don't feel some type of way when Sam gives that damn speech, and then like you're a heartless human being in Two Towers, when he's and like that. I was watching that movie in October and November of 2020, and so many terrible things were happening in the world, in my personal life. This was the time in my life where I had a panic attack in the car and had to pull over because I was sobbing so hard. And then Black Eyed Peas' I Got a Feeling came on the radio. And I was just sitting there sobbing with
I Got a Feeling.
Yeah, let's live it up.
Yeah.
And then I started laughing so hard that I was just crying more. And so then I'm watching this scene of Sam being like, how can you ever imagine things being good when they've been so bad? And I'm like, you're right, Sam. Things have been so terrible. How can we imagine things ever being good again? And then it's like, because there's stuff worth fighting for. And then like that whole sequence also is happening. Another favorite moment with the Ents storming Isengard. There's that one tree that is set on fire and he just drowns himself.
There's a lot of good stuff that happens in the background.
Let's see. Rohan showing up at Pelennor Fields, iconic. And it was so, like, because I didn't know the movies. I couldn't necessarily remember the sequence of events, even like on rewatches when I was preparing for episodes and stuff. And I'd be rewatching it and I would legitimately forget that like Rohan has this entrance and it would happen. And I would be like, oh my God, it's them.
They made it.
Every time.
They did the thing, guys.
Yeah, lots of great moments. There's a scene in the book where Frodo and Sam are in Mordor and it's depressing. And then Sam like looks up. I think this is where they took inspiration for his speech in the movie, but he looks up and like the clouds like part ways and he sees this star shining and it's like it's up there beyond our reach and like reminding him that like there's still light and goodness in the world.
God, thank God he wrote these before 1969. Am I right?
I don't understand.
That was the moon landing.
Was that all it is?
Yeah, the moon landing.
You said the stars are beyond their reach.
Oh.
And then in 69 we landed on the moon.
Okay, well, there's still more stars beyond
I
the
know,
reach of
but
the moon.
This Roman believes in stars. You're really funny. It's a good one, Mary Clay.
What?
So
you
that's
just
a good one,
stressed me
Mary Clay.
out a lot just now, Ethan.
What?
You don't believe in stars?
Do you?
Yes, I believe in the stars.
Sure thing.
Is this a joke? Is this a
No,
a Star Wars reference?
No.
No, although the stars in Star Wars don't work.
I'm assuming there are stars in Star Wars.
Yes, it's
I mean,
immediately
wild
iconic.
assumption.
Hold on, time out. It's Planet Wars, though. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Bummer.
And it's actually not. It's not even Planet Wars. It's like people wars on different planets and stuff.
Well, it's like different governments.
Yeah, which are people, not planets.
Right.
Hey, spoilers. There's people. Now I know there's people in this franchise.
Well, people in the sense that like
I didn't know.
Hard
We're
to
not
have a
talking
book
about-
without people.
Yeah. So John Green writes about this in one of his books. And this is an important question for you to consider while watching Star Wars.
Is it?
It is. Is Chewbacca a person?
It's a hugely important question.
We'll get into that, I'm sure. Raiders of the Found arc asks, are you glad you started this adventure? Yes, definitely. I have met... To get sentimental and sappy and real for a minute, I never would be friends with these two fools had it not been for this podcast. They both just did finger snaps and finger guns.
She came to my birthday party this year as a surprise.
She came to my birthday party last year. As a
Your whole
surprise.
bar, yeah.
She won't even tell us when her birthday is, so we can surprise her.
This is true.
She has a sword day. It's April 16th.
She's a sword day. April 16th is her sword day. You know why? Because it's the day we bought her a sword.
We didn't buy her a Lord of the
Master
Rings sword.
sword.
No, we bought her a Zelda sword, which is a way better gift.
Yo, when you were like, hey, can we do 8:30 instead? I was like, obviously, because now I can continue playing Zelda for another 30 minutes. The real reason I am ending That's What I'm Talking About is so I can play Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Every time you
That's
say
the real
TOTK,
reason
this
why
is
this is happening.
this is how disconnected I am from Zelda. Is that every time you say
Toska.
you're gonna go play TOTK, I'm like, it's ROTK, Return of the King. Like, what is TOTK? Like, I have to think about it every single time.
Yeah. It did not come naturally to me. Someone started I've seen some people using Skywalk Before You Run with the acronym, which is SBYR, and I was like, what are those letters?
Spear.
What are you
Spire.
talking about?
Oh my god.
Not as good as Twitter, gotta have a vowel in there.
The name of the answer or asker of this question made me realize that once you're done with Star Wars, you should return to this format and have it be That's What I'm Jonesing For and do the Indiana Jones movies.
There's only 5, and then you'd be done.
It's a short.
There's only
it's a short
5, yeah.
Well, there's only 4 for the next couple weeks, but then there will be only 5.
She's not even starting Star Wars in the fall, Tyler. There will be 5.
What is the average airspeed velocity of an unladen eagle?
Oh, are we talking African
Not
or European?
fast enough to save Frodo and Sam. Well, fast enough to save Frodo and Sam, not fast enough to get them there.
Well, hold on. Are we talking African or European eagles?
It's not that they're
Talking about
we're talking Middle Earth.
No,
Middle-earthian.
what's the name of the goddamn planet?
Valerian. Arda.
Arda. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but what about the continent? We're talking
Mary Clay, if you think I know the name of the
Valinorian.
continent that Middle Earth is on, you're on drugs.
Middle Earth is the continent.
Oh, okay.
I love being able to actually people about this franchise now. Arda is the Earth, and then
You should really not cover Star Wars.
Middle Earth is the...
You could do Star Wars for 4 years and
Yeah,
you still won't be able to actually people. So
That's fine. I did not set out to know everything there is to know about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, and by no means do I. Even after, like, not just like talking about the stuff that I haven't gone into and that I probably never will, but even the stuff that I have read, I'm like, I don't know, I don't remember. I read the entire Silmarillion.
Well, so
couldn't tell you.
Here's the interesting
most of it
comparison between the two people whose stuff you're visiting yourself upon, or visiting upon yourself. Visiting upon yourself. I guess you happen to Tolkien more than Tolkien happened to you. But the difference is that J.R.R. Tolkien is somebody you can look back at and be like, oh yes, there's a clear chronology to when he wrote the letters. George Lucas lied all the time.
That's fine.
He just wrote
I'm
stuff
fine
out
with
of his
that. I'm
ass
fine with
and
that.
then lied about it at all times.
When I started this, and initially it was like, I don't care. I'm just going to read it and see what happens, which is exactly how I'm starting Star Wars, with the same attitude of like, I don't care. I'm just going to watch it and see what happens, you know? And it was like only when people started being really smug about like, when you share an opinion and being like, I love this moment, and people are like, that's not how it happened. And then I can go, well, actually, in the book, this is what happened, and this is the scene I'm referring to. And it's as a reaction to other people that makes you want to be like, no, I actually do know what I'm talking about. I'm not just like, I think there is probably also a healthy dose of like sexism and misogyny underlying that as well, of being like, this woman can't know about Lord of the Rings.
I would assume that you know it better than any man I've ever spoken to.
Going into Star Wars, I have like zero desire. I think I'm going to be more delighted to piss off people by being so confidently wrong about stuff. Like, if someone's like, that's not what happened, I'm just going to be like, okay, I don't care.
You're going to kill me. You are going to kill me. I won't be able to talk to you for the next 6 years.
I do love that you were like, man, I just spent the last 4 years getting punched in the face all the time.
Yeah.
Time to go get kicked in the balls for 3 years.
Yeah.
This is great. I love this.
And that's why I feel safe, because I have no balls. So
Wait,
I feel like I have my experiences from this podcast, I think, have given me an attitude of being like, I don't care how terrible this fandom is. I'm also not planning. What does that say? John Green, DFTBA. Congratulations. You own a John Green signed copy of a book.
Of the book that we were just talking about.
Approximately 200,000 other people, because he signs 200,000 copies of his books.
A few things. 1,
you're not special.
First edition. 2, it says DFTBA, which makes it at least a little bit better. 3, it has a Tuatara on the front. And 4, this is the book that asks if Chewbacca is a person.
Okay. I will make sure to come back and revisit that question.
And that is a list in the way that John Green frequently wrote his early novels.
Okay. A lot of people were very concerned about whether this is like the end of the podcast. And to those people, I'll say, you didn't listen to my announcement episode. No, this is not the end of That's What I'm Talking About. I do still plan to come back and do episodes for new seasons of Rings of Power, as long as it, like, I got some level of enjoyment out of Rings of Power. And that's all that mattered to me. I didn't care about whether or not it made sense with the lore. I don't care about that stuff because it's so dense and I don't remember the lore that I read, so I don't care if it's not accurate or if it's different or if Elrond has short blonde hair instead of long brown hair. So as long as I continue to enjoy Rings of Power, I'll come back and make episodes about that. There's some movies that have been announced. Who knows if those will actually happen or not. I'll come back and make episodes about that. I say this like, oh, this is the last episode for now. There's a good chance I will be back next week with an interview of the front end of Bill the Pony. There's a clip, a behind the scenes clip a couple months ago of 2 stunt actors because they can't helicopter a pony on top of a mountain. So they had to use literal 2 people in a horse costume for some shots.
That was Rhett and
One
Link.
of them,
the fact that that's the only actor you'd ever have on from the movie series is the most incredible thing I've ever heard in my life.
and I
when there are
stitched it and was like,
literally-
this is incredible. I have to find these people. And one of them commented and said, that's me. I was the front end of Bill the Pony. And I replied and was like, please, like, for the love of God, if you are joking, this is the meanest thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Please tell me you're telling the truth.
See, here's the thing, though. If you get the front half of Bill the Pony to come on, that's what I'm talking about. That's it. You can't come back
I
if there are
peaked.
if there are more episodes of Rings of Power. You can't come back for them. It's over at that point. Like,
There's nothing else worth talking
short
about.
of interviewing Tom Bombadil himself, I cannot imagine a more that's what I'm talking about way to end the podcast.
I do think that would be so great is if you like put up an episode and you were like, this is an interview with Tom Bombadil. And you just went out there and you were like, hey guys, I'm Mary Claire. If that's too complicated, just call me MC. And then you just started playing some like twinkly fantasy forest sounds for the next hour and a half. And just like, that's it. And then an hour and a half later, you pop back on and you're like, that was an interview with Tom Bombadil.
What a great interview. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening.
He just speaks entirely in
And like
Korok noises
and
from
chimes.
Zelda. And bird and tweeting noises.
and fantasy forest sounds.
Yeah. Good idea. I'll keep
Or
that
you
one in
could
my
do like
back
an episode
pocket.
with Treebeard where you just have him be like,
Oh, he froze in the best possible position.
We speak in Old Entish. Everything in Old Entish.
I don't know if you know this or not, Tyler, but I'm endeavoring to end the podcast, not create more episodes.
I know, but these are just silly, fun little cutesy ideas.
Yeah. I also got some comment. It's really funny when I made this announcement. It's the like comments and messages I got from people, like usernames that I have never seen. Like when you are a content creator, you might not keep like close personal tabs on like every one of your followers or people who interact with you. But when people comment or interact with you repeatedly, you start to recognize their username.
Right.
And there are people, like, there are usernames that I have never seen in my life who are like, oh, so you're not going to do History of Middle-earth or the Unfinished Tales? Or,
No.
oh my God, I'm so sad to see this go. And I'm like, I've never heard from you in my life. If you really like the podcast that much, maybe you should have followed one of the accounts or something.
But
at
then on the
very
flip
least.
side of that, are you interacting with every podcast that you quite enjoy?
No. But I don't think no, it's not saying that like people have to interact with everything that they enjoy. If you're going to comment and complain about something but have never shown support, it just seems a little ironic.
I know, you're really living the Van Gogh life.
No, because I have both ears and also my work popped off while I'm still living.
But what if it like triple pops off? Like 6 months from
After
now.
I die?
No, like 6 months from now, the new
Oh.
season of Rings of Power comes out, and it like rips. Like it's better than Game of Thrones, and everybody's watching it. And
That's cool. Well,
and then
They
your
got
thing is-
categorically curb stomped by Game of Thrones for what it's worth.
correct. But
That's
then your
fine, yeah.
show like not quadruples, like grows
all of a
100
sudden, like I'm
times in
getting tons of
size.
hits.
Right.
Yeah.
Tons of hits.
I mean, like...
Then you start it back up, man. Like,
Like,
Yeah, I don't know. Then I'm like, wow, there seem to be a lot more of you these days. That's cool.
that's neat. I'm back.
Hi.
Hello.
I started this podcast knowing nothing, and now I know exponentially more. Welcome.
It's good to be
Yeah,
here.
you go back a second time and read it again, but as somebody who knows what she's talking about.
I guess I would, yeah. Those are some questions I got. Would I have I rewatched or reread things? Will I reread things? I'm not a big rereader. Honestly, I think the only books I've ever reread are the Harry Potter books, and that was like in high school during the summers. Like every summer I would reread the Harry Potter series.
You're rereading the Harry Potter books right now.
Loosely.
Once
I
every
go
4
on,
chapters.
yeah, basically. Not even 4. It's when I'm on the restricted section, it's like, okay, cool, we're starting Order of the Phoenix, and here's this chapter where he's in the ministry, he's having his court hearing. Oh, okay, the next time I'm on, they're in Hogwarts and Hagrid is back. Okay, the next time, oh no, Dumbledore has left. And then the next time, oh, Sirius is dead. Like,
The hits.
a very
Bring her back for the hits. She's the ringer.
accelerated version. Anyway, I don't think I will reread Lord of the Rings. If I do, it would be like unless this pops off like Van Gogh and has the second life, and then I come back and start episodes rereading it. As far as rewatching the movies, I'm not a big movie watcher to begin with.
You don't say.
Starts a movie podcast. So I have watched all of the movies, I think 3 times total. And that was when I was covering them, because I watched them first initially,
and then in pieces,
and then I watched them piece by piece,
and then the extended editions.
I did an additional watch for when we were covering it on Bacon and Eggs.
So
and then
4
extended
times.
editions. So 4 times. And then I have watched Two Towers an additional time because they were screening it locally, and I went to go see that in person.
I mean, realistically, I've probably only seen Return of the King.
Ha!
I mean, realistically, I've only seen Return of the King like probably 6 times.
That's more than I've seen it.
And I think 3 of them were in theaters. Like,
yeah.
I just kept going back to these. I saw The Two Towers in theaters 6 times.
That's insane.
But like, I think I've revisited it like maybe thrice since then.
I'm not a huge movie rewatcher, more so than I think either of you. I've seen The Lord of the Rings a fair few times when I was growing up. One of my best friends was a huge fan. He's probably the one that introduced me more than my dad did. But he would always want to, like, when we'd have a sleepover or something, he'd be like, let's watch all 3 extended editions. And we'd make it like an hour into the Fellowship and fall asleep. But Star Wars, on the other hand, I rewatch Star Wars
a lot,
all the time. And that's just kind of like a phase of life I'm in where it's like, it's familiar and I like it, and I don't have to think about it, and I can just put it on.
Yeah.
But even still with that, like, I watched Return of the Jedi the other day. I think I've only seen that movie cover to cover less than 10 times.
That's a lot of times to me.
Well,
it's been around since before I was born.
The Star Wars movies, for what it's worth, are way more fun.
Correct.
Love them, hate them. They're like, they can be background noise if they need to be. The Lord of the Rings movies cannot be background noise.
You have to like sit down and appreciate it.
Like, the cinema is happening in front of you.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think anytime I will rewatch the movies, I have a feeling it'll be in like friend settings
be
or like
Christina's
community
fault, I feel like.
settings. Yeah, definitely. Like I think I will rewatch it when friends are like, "Hey, we're having a Lord of the Rings marathon, want to come?" And I'll pop in for, I'll pop in when Aragorn shows up in Fellowship of the Ring, and I'll leave after the doors in Two Towers.
Yeah, it's just like the Shelob part's coming up. I'm going to go get cookout. You guys want anything? I'll be back post-Spider.
Here's the thing about the movies. Anytime Frodo and Sam show up, I immediately stop caring. I'm like, oh, it's the boring part now. It's like, it's the important part, but it's the drudgery part.
Are we talking about the Council of Elrond?
The walking a lot. There's a lot of walking.
Yeah.
A lot of walking scenes.
What I would absolutely die to do is do one of those like live orchestra showings
of
one of the
100%.
movies. And we in Richmond, the Richmond Symphony Orchestra does live orchestra showings with the Star Wars movies. They've been doing it for several years now.
Aren't they doing Goblet of Fire like this weekend?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they started doing Harry Potter. Yeah.
Yeah, like
God,
like
they could do
this
any
weekend.
Harry Potter movie, and they chose Goblet of Fire.
No, they've been doing it. They do like one a year. So they started Harry Potter 4 years ago.
But see, the thing is, the Lord of the Rings music gets slept on because Howard Shore is not like the guy. Like
It's not John Williams.
it's not John
yeah.
Williams, it's not Hans Zimmer. Like he's not like a big name.
Did John Williams compose Star Wars?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
For
I
sure.
couldn't. I don't know.
He does everything that the Steven Spielberg has anything to do with, and
Okay.
Steve and George Lucas were big fans or big friend. They were good friends, big friends, good friends. So, yeah, I think Steve lent John Williams to
I
George
love the
Lucas.
idea of referring to Steven Spielberg as Steve.
After he
You
made
clearly
Ready
have
Player
not watched
One,
The
he's
Fablemans.
lucky. He's lucky to be called anything other than like Mr. S.
I think it was on This Week of Hey Riddle Riddle. They were trying to think of a name of a movie that involved the name Steve, and it was something like Better Call Steve, and they were like, "That's not it. What is that a play on? Like what? Like they were trying to think. They were trying to think of it, and they said Better Off Steve,
Oh, instead of Better Off Ted.
and
Better Off Ted was
Better
such a
Off
good TV
Steve.
show that was ruined for no reason, canceled.
Any questions about the series Cheers?
no.
Next
Where everybody knows your name though. Can't wait for Cheers to This by Mary Clay Watt, the podcast where she watches Cheers.
Cheers. Those definitely exist already.
Oh my God, that's Ted Danson.
You could, for what it's worth, you could definitely get Ted Danson on your podcast to talk about Cheers. 100% Cheers.
I don't know
Except
if
for
you
I
could.
wouldn't talk to him about Cheers. I would talk to him about The Good Place.
No, I think at this point he'd probably be interested in talking about Cheers instead
See,
of The Good
I'm
Place.
too afraid to talk to the people who are that involved in the material, which is why I want to have the Bill the Ponies of the world on the podcast. You know, is there a Bill the Pony equivalent in Star Wars that I can get on?
The dude that plays Chewbacca, I think he passed away recently.
Yeah, Peter
There's
Mayhew's
a guy
dead.
in the suit for Peter Mayhew. There's a guy in the suit for Vader.
See, the problem is the answer here is Warwick Davis.
Yeah.
But
like,
he's
but he's Warwick Davis.
yeah, but
No,
he's
I think,
dope.
I think
yeah.
you could go more simple. I think you could go like anybody who was in a stormtrooper costume.
Yeah.
There were no clone troopers at all. And the clone troopers have a face, and he is an actor. He
Yeah.
has his own show.
Well, I guess I'll discover what random inconsequential background character I latch onto.
Freddie Prinze Jr. He has a pretty major role in Rebels.
Except for I would talk to him about playing Fred Jones of Scooby-Doo.
Hold on, you're not doing the cartoons, are you?
So there's another question that I have been asked a lot.
God. You don't need to answer right
And
now.
I know
ugh.
it's only the beginning, but I swear to God, if I hear one more person ask me what order I'm watching, I will start drawing names of movies out of a hat and watch it that way.
As your producer,
don't do that.
I can answer this for you. There is
He's also
only
you're not a producer anymore.
You're not the producer anymore.
That's fine.
You've been fired. This is actually the exit interview.
Oh, fun. I hope you enjoyed our time together. I was very lenient and never checked on anything ever. As the non-producer, I will tell you there is one answer to this question. You need to ignore everybody else, and it is release order.
That's the only, I can't imagine why you would watch it for the first time in your life in whatever other like fan orders have
It's not a
been
fan order though,
arranged.
because like chronological makes sense. Like he's lying. There are two options.
I guess there are two
There's-
options, but I think for an adult who can appreciate the whole thing and doesn't know much going into it, I think release order is the correct answer.
And also I want to, exactly like how I did with, not exactly because The Hobbit came out first.
But you went movie release order.
Similarly with how I got a lot of pushback about watching the theatrical editions of Lord of the Rings and the fact that I covered them at all. And I was like, well, this is what people were presented when it came out, when Fellowship of the Ring came out in whatever, September 2001, 2000. This is what people watched. And I want to see, what did people first experience?
The only one I've seen the extended edition of, by the way, is Fellowship, and I did it accidentally when we covered them for Bacon and Eggs because
What'd you think of it?
I don't know. I couldn't. It'd been long enough since I've seen it that I don't remember what scenes existed and which ones
Well,
didn't.
and that's the other thing is if I were to watch the extended editions first, I would have no reference for what's extended, like what's been cut, like what. It's just
there were
addition.
definitely scenes where I was like, don't remember this.
Yeah, so if I were to watch Star Wars starting in chronological order, I would have no context for like what is this setting up? What are these like who do these characters become? Like what are these like cameos and what are these hints? What is this foreshadowing?
I would
to,
stay away
you know?
from saying you're doing a release order either because then people are going to get on you about the cartoons and stuff. Just be like, I'm doing how I do it. Deal with it. Like
first, I'm watching the movies.
You're starting with
I'm
4.
watching them in the order that they were released in theatrical cinemas. And when I finish the movies, we will see what my opinion is like. If I really hate it, I might just end it there.
I swear to God, if you really hate it, please don't tell me.
And if I like it, then maybe I'll start asking like, what else should like, what's the next suggestion? What's the next like logical step for someone to watch?
I will say this as a Star Wars fan. If you didn't like the movies on the onset, like if you watched all 11 movies and you were like, I don't know if I enjoyed this. Star Wars does a very good job of selling you on the movies with their additional content. Like that is.
But I don't think if I've just spent, you know, if each movie is 2.5 hours long. Oh my God, now I have to do math. Oh no.
You're watching like 30 hours of movies.
Okay, great. I'm not gonna. If I didn't enjoy that, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna invest more time into convincing myself that I liked it.
If you watch all 11 movies, you will like some of them. Almost guaranteed.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think I'm going to get to the end of watching all of the movies and be like, yeah, I didn't like any of that. I don't think it will. This is what I eventually came to. I was trying to like put into words like what I expect will happen. I don't think Star Wars will leave as big of an impression on me as Tolkien and Lord of the Rings has. I think I will just experience Star Wars and be like, okay, cool. Now I know why my friends are obsessed with it. Or like I understand what they are talking about.
For what it's worth, whether you like the movies that much or not, you should watch the show where Pedro Pascal plays the space pirate that picks up an orphan.
Oh yeah, because I am on Pedro Pascal TikTok, I started getting like weekly compilation videos. It's like all the Grogu noises in this episode.
That's the best Star Wars content you could ask for what it's worth.
And then the voiceover effects where there's one that like it makes it kind of like raspy or whatever.
Yeah.
And someone started doing like weekly, not even like they're going back through all the episodes and they're doing like Grogu POV like explanations of episodes. And it's like,
I used the super magic powers and I really did it quite sneakily so he didn't see and just slid the whole bag of cookies over here. And then he was like, what? And I was like, maybe if someone learned to share, you wouldn't be sitting over there with one cookie while I have all the cookies. And then Dad came and picked me up and I was like, wee! He's going really fast and I had my cookies. It's my absolute favorite when he does the little zoomies in the ship. And then I was just living my best Grogu life with my cookies.
and like that's how I think I want to consume Star Wars content.
There are worse ways to consume Star Wars content.
Yeah, such as pulling names out of the hat and watching it in that order.
Don't do that.
I would do that. That sounds delightful.
Whatever you do, you should like. You don't have to take my advice at all. You should watch the 9 movies in their like 3 movie chunks, and then worry about the other 2 that go in the middle. Like even in release order, like those came out in between the last 3. So like. So
Yeah,
they did
you should
episode
start with
7.
the episodic films.
They did episode 7, Rogue One, episode 8, Solo,
Hang on,
episode 9.
stop. Don't even name the movies because I don't know the names of them. And I'm going to do a fun bit where I try to go through and name them. So now I know that 2 of them are named Rogue One and Solo, apparently.
You'll forget. It's fine.
This is literally... Like, this is how I'm emphasizing how little I know about Star Wars. I don't know the names of the movies. I don't know how many there are.
You will absolutely not get the guy that played Tarkin on your show. 100% chance he is booked.
Is he dead?
Yeah.
Is he terrible?
No,
is it Pedro Pascal?
No, he's dead. Oh, you
A
could get the guy
lot of them are dead.
You could get the second guy that
of them
played
are dead.
Tarkin. That would be pretty neat, actually.
The second guy that played Tarkin was a CGI
Yeah, but there was a guy that they had to
that's bummer.
CGI off of.
That seems in my that's in my like.
I don't think there was a guy. I think they just stuck him
a
in
CGI
post.
person.
No, I don't think so. I think it's like
manifest that.
It's like young Cap. There's like a dude that shows up on TikTok every so often, and he was like, "Yeah, I was skinny Cap."
You should get that guy as your co-host.
What, Skinny Cap?
Skinny Captain America, yeah. For That's Marvelous.
Someone asked me, I can't find it, what are my favorite memes that I've made? And I think my favorite ones that I have made, there's a joke from the movie Brother Bear. This year, I lost my dear husband, Edgar. And then in the background, quit telling everyone I'm dead.
It's like,
Sometimes I can still hear his voice. And I have applied that to not one, but two situations in the Tolkien verse. The first being when Bilbo returns from The Hobbit and everyone is selling his stuff because they thought he died. And the second is Denethor and Faramir, of Denethor being like, oh, my poor dead son, and Pippin and Gandalf, and everyone is like, actually, he's still quite alive.
He's not dead.
And then the other ones I love are Lucille Bluth quotes as Denethor, and so many of them work, but the two best ones are, it's within like the first 5 minutes of the first episode of Arrested Development. She goes, everything they do is so dramatic. It just makes me want to set myself on fire. And then the second one is, I love all my children equally. Earlier that day, I don't care for Job. And those are some of my favorite.
Can you blame her, though?
There was a TikTok of
You gave him a letter to mail.
Don't tell me that was too much for him.
No, Michael. He mailed the letter. That's not the point.
Job had not mailed the letter, but in an act of defiance, dramatically hurled the letter into the sea.
And there are all these videos of people under the sound on the beach trying to throw paper into the sea, and it's very funny. Anyway, yeah, so when I was scrolling back through my memes on the Instagram account, which is the Instagram is where a lot of growth came from too. I was trying to like go back and pinpoint like when did this start picking up, and it was like after I had finished the Lord of the Rings movies, I started getting tons of interactions and likes.
Yeah. Once you became a meme account.
Yeah, I became a meme account. Yeah.
That's a service that you have taken on free of charge that the internet has benefited from, is being a Lord of the Rings meme
I would
account.
like to think so too. And then like that extended into TikTok so well, because then you can do memes in an entirely different way with TikTok, and it's so much fun. The one meme that I think this is my most liked, I can't find it. It has like 55,000 likes, and it's a caption from Shane and Ryan from BuzzFeed. They were like the BuzzFeed Unsolved guys. They did an episode about like a treasure or Bigfoot or something, and they went out to try and find it, and they go like, well, I guess at the end of the day, the real treasure was friendship. And then the other one goes, I don't care, I want my fucking gold. And I did that with like Bilbo versus Thorin in The Hobbit. And that one, for whatever reason, has 55,000 likes.
Oh, the countless hours you lost making memes were all
What do you mean?
worth it.
I think gained. Hours gained.
There was one time very recently where you were like, I blacked out for 4 hours making a Lord of the Rings meme.
No. I did, because I downloaded like a Procreate app and I don't know how to use it very well. And I met Bill the Pony at the Hobbiton Harvest Festival, and that took me so long because I don't know how to use Procreate, and I don't know how to use like these tools and layers, and it was a disaster. And then on TikTok, the things that have all gone viral are almost exclusively about Aragorn being hot.
I mean, what can you do?
Thirst traps.
Yeah. It's just so, I just can't express how satisfying it is when there's such a specific like moment that happens in a piece of media, and you're like, this applies directly to this situation. Like, they're so dramatic, it makes me want to set myself on fire.
It fits so
Like-
well.
One day it's going to come full circle and the Arrested Development writers are going to be like, yeah, we were thinking about Denethor when we wrote that.
And like, like that's what's fun is that like obviously they were probably not creating Lucille Bluth inspired by Denethor, but that's what like makes it more fun is when you make these insane stupid connections.
Say that, but like there are bigger
really
leaps. There are bigger
There are
leaps you
bigger
could make.
leaps. Well, I mean, Tolkien inspired a lot of things.
Yeah, especially a lot of nerd things.
He infiltrates. Is that an egg?
And
It is an
Tyler's
egg.
been holding up an
I'll tell
egg
ya.
for 5 minutes, guys. That is an egg.
people
That
who
is an
write
egg.
television are nerds, for what it's worth.
And also, people who write television deserve to be paid. That's right. This is being created in the middle. This entire podcast has been going on in the middle of the writer's strike, and that's why this podcast has been so terrible.
Yeah, your writers
Because it's
quit
not-
immediately.
Yeah.
We had a couple episodes scripted out at the beginning, and then the rest of it, it's all been just off the dome from Mary Clay.
Anyway, yeah, I had I do still have, even though I think I've run out of meme steam. There's like not as many good ideas floating around in the old noggin anymore. But I had a lot of fun doing that, and I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to create memes of the same caliber and enjoyment level with Star Wars.
No, but that's where you're wrong, is because
That is
you're going to be
definitely where you're
inspired
wrong.
all over. First of all, Star Wars is the most memeable, most gifable, most everythingable piece of content that's ever existed. It's a meme. It's where half the damn memes come from.
Like most of Star Wars fans like the trilogy that they like because of the memes.
Because of the memes, right? Like, but also you're going to unlock this new world of like, I can make Lord of the Rings memes about Star Wars, and I can make Star Wars memes about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like, if you think that there are scenarios that overlap in a funny way, wait until you watch Star Wars.
I will say the meme that I have now unlocked is the distracted boyfriend meme, and one of the girls is Return of the King and one of the girls is Return of the Jedi, and like depending on what fandom you're in,
Yeah.
you just swap them. So that's the one meme I understand now.
As a devout member of the Star Wars fandom with a child named after a Star Wars character, Return of the King over Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, famously your child Yoda.
His name is Finn.
Your child C-3PO.
Grogu noise compilation number 5.
This is Grogu noise compilation number 5. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then his little brother, Din Djarin.
It's gotta exist, right? So I just want to read a couple of my terrible, aside from the terrible Star Wars podcast name that I ended up picking, some of the ones that I didn't pick. Consider what the winner was, and that provides context for where I started. Star Wars, more like Star Boars.
I would have been so mad.
Walking on Sunshine.
Good, but it would have been weird to spell.
If you give a mouse a Wookiee, followed by that's the way the Wookiee crumbles.
If you give a mouse a Wookiee, greater than that's the way the Wookiee crumbles, only slightly.
Big on Wookiee sounds like cookie puns. I see.
Well, once I made that connection, it opened up a gold mine.
A gold mine.
You see,
I think it
the
opened up.
possibilities were endless.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Putting the cart before the force.
That one's good.
Meet me in St. Chewy.
Sleepless in Cloud City, you know?
I don't understand. Which was another literal at the top of the list for potential podcast names. I did not understand that reference.
That's
but
a
that
Marvel
one would
podcast.
depend on people understanding the reference of Cap saying I understand that reference.
But he's not talking about a Star Wars reference, is he?
No, it's just Captain America going, I understand that reference, and that's literally it. And so that would be, I did not understand that reference. This is why it's at the top of the bad names list. It's fine. Concluding with R2 Fast, D2 Furious.
It's not too late to change it, for what it's worth.
And then there's a lot more that I didn't read. But I just wanted to share R2 Fast, D2 Furious. I felt like that was...
That's the best one.
That was in the...
I mean, it's not,
I
but
think
it
that's
is.
what Tyler should have named his child. I have to end this podcast eventually. Thank everyone for listening. Bye. No, I'm just kidding.
the most awkward
know how to
sign off
end
in
this
history. It's just, I have to end this by
Frantic mumbling.
I
Bye.
have other stuff to do now. Goodbye.
I've said this a lot, and it's not even me like being cute and sentimental. Bilbo's line is, "I'm quite ready for another adventure," and that is truly how I feel. I have had a very satisfying, fulfilling journey with Tolkien. I'm ready to go on another journey with a new franchise, new people to talk to, new people to piss me off, new people for me to piss off. This is never over. I don't think Tolkien will ever be something that I can fully close the book on forever. So this is not if you thought you were getting rid of me this easily, think again. It's just like Return of the King, and this is just Blackout number 1, you know?
No, you're about to come back with an army of ghosts.
That doesn't happen after one of the blackouts.
All I'm saying is we're not even at the blackouts yet.
No, this is a blackout. This is definitely a blackout. And then when I interview the front end of Bill the Pony, that'll be, we're back in the Shire. That wasn't the ending.
And then you guys will come back and burn the Shire to the ground.
Actually, every single time I come back with a new episode, I'll just open with, "Well, I'm back."
Yeah, that's the last line, the thing that Sam says, right?
Yeah. So but that's what I'll use to open every new episode after this point.
Well,
I'm back.
I love that that's the last line of the series. That's so much less good than "I'm quite ready for another adventure."
Well, I'm back. That's not how The Hobbit ends.
Oh, okay.
That's what Bilbo says when they go on the ship, too.
Oh, you're right, yes. How does The Hobbit end? The Hobbit has a good closing line, I remember.
It's like Gandalf saying, like, "After all, Bilbo, you're only one hobbit in a wide world after all." This is what's so funny. In my copy of The Hobbit, they put the first chapter of Lord of the Rings at the end, like publishers will do, to be like, "Hey, let's get you interested.
From J.R.R. Tolkien.
Let's get you interested." It says, "If you are interested in hobbits, you will learn a lot more about them in the Lord of the Rings." And I'm like, I think people who are reading this book already know.
It's like when they put, so-and-so superhero will return at the end of the 35th Marvel movie. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I figured.
The Hobbit ends, Gandalf says, "You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I am very fond of you, but you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world after all." "Thank goodness," said Bilbo, laughing, and handed him the tobacco jar. And that's how The Hobbit ends.
The Hobbit ends with the words tobacco jar, and Return of the King ends with "he said." I'm looking at it right here.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
"Well, I'm back."
He drew a deep breath. "Well, I'm back," he said.
Should have just ended. I think we can assume, Tolkien, if he were to take a deep breath, that he was then going to say something. The cover art, logos, and merch designs for That's What I'm Talking About were designed by Vaishon Brandon. You can support him, and you should support him on Instagram at Vaishon Designs. Even though this chapter of the podcast is coming to an end, you can continue to buy merch for That's What I'm Talking About at tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod. You can get stickers, hoodies, crew necks, long sleeves, t-shirts, and I think maybe even tote bags. I think those are the options that I gave. So if you have enjoyed this podcast, you can outwardly show that support with your That's What I'm Talking About swag. I'm sure I will continue to post and share things occasionally on social media, so follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at TolkienAboutPod. And a reminder that you can follow Skywalk Before You Run on Twitter and Instagram at SkywalkRunPod. In the meantime, you can also follow me personally on Twitter and TikTok at MCWhat'sUp and on Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. Thank you so much to every single one of my patrons. You have been such an amazing group of people, such an enthusiastic group of people, and I appreciate every little bit of support that you have shown me throughout the past 4 years. Whether you've been a patron since I first opened it a couple months into the podcast thinking this is a dumb idea, no one's going to want to do this, to the people who joined just recently. That kindness does not go unnoticed by me. So, a massive shout out to Johan, Renee, Katie, Taylor, Thomas, Sally, Josh, Alan, Adele, S.A., Becca, Madison, Brendan, Baker Bell, Frost, Valerie, Hale, Ralph, Phil, Bill. That was very convenient that your names were next to each other. Christina, Erica, John, Guy, David, Steph, Susan, Tim, Richard, Dagmar, Sean, I am Lobstronomus, and Ian. Thank you immensely from the bottom of my heart. This podcast truly was made possible by listeners like you. Thank you. And finally, a piece of actual sincerity, because when I'm with Tyler and Ethan, I tend to, stay pretty jokey and lighthearted. Just want to take a moment to genuinely thank every single person who has ever interacted with this podcast. This is going to be a very random reference, but hang in there for a minute. In 2015, Anna Lee Ashford won a Tony Award, and at the end of her speech, she's frantically wrapping it up, and she says, "Thank you to every friend I've ever had, every teacher I've ever had, and every friend I've ever met." And that's literally how I feel. Thank you to every listener I've ever had. Thank you to every guest that has ever come on here. And thank you to every person that I have interacted with online or in real life because of this podcast. It has been weird 4 years. I started this podcast and I was still living at home with my parents. And now I'm in my own apartment that's on a tilt and it has no central air conditioning, but it's my own apartment. And Tyler has 3 children now, and Ethan is getting married this winter. And we have found friends and we have lost friends. It's really been a miraculous 4 years, not just because Tolkien's work, I think, is completely unparalleled, and that I don't think I will ever experience anything that has this level of dedication, for better or for worse, this level of love and attention that Tolkien put into his world. I don't think anyone has ever done that, and it's truly remarkable to get to experience that and to get to experience it the way I did, with so many wonderful people making it enjoyable along the way. I've said it multiple times throughout the podcast, and I will continue to say it after I finish recording this. The reason this work is still alive today, this is a 50-plus-year-old book. The Hobbit was written almost 100 years ago. And the reason it is still so alive is because of the people. Again, for better or for worse. And you know what? I choose to believe for the better. The majority of the people who are in this fandom, I think, are such genuine, wonderful people who just want to share their creativity and their passions for this work and share what makes it amazing to them with other people and find connection through that. And that's been really amazing to get to experience. I know we've talked about all the various ways to say goodbye with Lord of the Rings, but I want to read this little piece from Bilbo's song, The Road Goes Ever On. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's Tolkien and it's long, but I've just had this little bit in my mind kind of this whole time, the last few months, as I've been starting to wrap things up. The road goes ever on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet. The road goes ever on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with weary feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then? I cannot say. So, thank you. Once again, this is not the last you will hear from me. The War of the Rohirrim movie is slated to come out in April 2024, so at the very least, you will see me then. And until next time, let's wrap this thing up. Well, this has been That's What I'm Tolkien About. I've done a lot of Tolkien. Thanks for listening. Thanks to these fools for replying to that tweet.
Anytime.
The least we could
anymore.
Do you guys have
anymore.
any?
But if
do you have any parting words for the audience?
This has been a grand adventure. I think for now, we should just pass around the tobacco jar.
As the great late Gandalf the Grey once said, "Fly, you fools."
And that's what I'm Tolkien about.
I'm like almost sad.